Every generation has its own definition of freedom. For some, it is a roaring engine on an open highway. For others, it is a quiet glide through narrow streets at sunset. The machines we build to move us often reveal who we are and what we value: efficiency, beauty, independence, or simply the joy of motion. Some creations transcend their era, bridging practicality and personality in a way that turns transport into culture. One small machine from the early 70s captured this perfectly: elegant yet simple, familiar yet endlessly evocative. It did not just move people, it moved an entire nation toward modern identity and later became a global style statement. Today, we revisit a true icon that proved minimalism could carry meaning and that design could speak louder than power. If you love stories about engineering, culture, and the timeless machines that shaped both, stay tuned. And while you are here, like, subscribe, and tell us which classic you want to see next. The Vespa Sprint Veloce 1972 arrived at a turning point in Italian history. The country was shifting from post-war rebuilding to a confident, design-driven society that saw mobility as a personal statement. The Vespa Sprint Veloce stood right at that intersection of necessity and expression. It was more than a scooter, it was a conversation about who you were and where you were headed. To understand its impact, we have to rewind to Italy's urban heartbeat in the late 60s. Cities were dense, parking was scarce, and cars were out of reach for most young people. The Vespa Sprint Veloce solved that problem elegantly. It delivered affordable independence with just enough flair to make every ride feel like a scene from a film. The name Sprint Veloce itself meant fast sprint, a promise of agility without intimidation. With its 150 cubic centimeters engine, it could cruise comfortably through city traffic and still stretch out on open roads between towns. Piaggio, the brand behind Vespa, understood what mobility meant in post-war Europe. It was not about speed alone, it was about freedom in compact form. The Vespa Sprint Veloce embodied that philosophy through intelligent engineering and design decisions that made it timeless. Its steel monocoque frame was a defining element. Unlike many competitors using tubular chassis and bolt-on panels, Vespa pressed steel into one continuous shell that acted as both structure and skin. This innovation kept weight low, stiffness high, and costs manageable. The Sprint Veloce carried that legacy forward with refinements that improved handling and stability while preserving the scooter's instantly recognizable silhouette. Its single-sided front fork simplified maintenance, and the engine layout tucked neatly to the side, balancing convenience with personality. Owners could access the engine with minimal tools, a rare trait that appealed to practical riders and enthusiasts alike. But practicality was only half the story, the other half was emotion. Italian designers had a gift for infusing machinery with character. The Sprint Veloce wore chrome accents, elegant curves, and a stance that felt alive even when parked. It was approachable yet sophisticated, like a tailored suit for the road. It reflected the confidence of 70s Italy, where design was not decoration but identity. Even the sound, a soft, rhythmic pulse from its two-stroke engine, became part of its charm. Riders described it as musical, not mechanical. It was mobility as melody. Beneath that artistry, Piaggio pursued reliability. The Sprint Veloce's 150 cubic centimeters two-stroke engine evolved from previous models but received internal upgrades for smoother power delivery and longer service life. With proper tuning, it could reach about 55 miles per hour, quick enough for commuting yet gentle enough for beginners. Fuel economy hovered near 90 miles per gallon, a serious advantage during times when cost mattered. This balance made it appealing across social classes, from students to professionals. Maintenance simplicity also helped it spread globally. Parts were standardized, and mechanics across Europe quickly learned to service it. Export markets welcomed the Vespa Sprint Veloce as a symbol of European taste, efficient, stylish, and unpretentious. In cities from Rome to San Francisco, it offered the same promise: easy motion through complexity. Its cultural resonance grew because it was not marketed as luxury, it was marketed as lifestyle. Owning one was a statement that you valued elegance in simplicity. It carried that unique Italian quality, sprezzatura, effortless charm. The Vespa Sprint Veloce did not chase trends, it created them. Its combination of gentle power and graceful design appealed equally to young dreamers and established professionals. Advertisements showed couples riding through sunlit streets, carefree but purposeful. That image became aspirational worldwide. At the same time, Piaggio carefully updated production techniques. Metal stamping became more precise, paint finishes more durable, and the use of plastics minimal to maintain authenticity. The Sprint Veloce was still handcrafted in spirit even as industrial efficiency improved. It was an object of integrity in a world learning mass production. To appreciate its staying power, think of how many vehicles from the early 70s still feel current. Very few. Yet the Sprint Veloce remains instantly recognizable, its form immune to time. The curved front shield, the rounded side panels, and the simple analog gauge cluster all reflect an era when design obeyed human proportions, not digital algorithms. That connection to the rider was key. Every control was mechanical and direct, the throttle cable, the manual gear twist on the handlebar, the clutch lever requiring just the right touch. It taught riders finesse, not aggression. Riding one was an experience that blended rhythm and control rather than raw performance. The community it built reflected that philosophy. Vespa clubs flourished across Europe and later worldwide, not as racing teams but as social circles celebrating craftsmanship and culture. The Sprint Veloce became a centerpiece at gatherings where stories mattered as much as machines. Riders compared restoration tips, routes, and road trip anecdotes. That community-driven legacy was no accident. Piaggio had cultivated it since the first Vespa rolled out in 1946. But by 1972, the company had perfected its formula: design that connected emotionally, engineering that endured mechanically, and accessibility that welcomed everyone. The Vespa Sprint Veloce was perhaps the purest expression of that vision. It captured the optimism of its time without losing the practicality that made it indispensable. Even as cars became cheaper and faster, the Sprint Veloce retained a loyal following because it represented something cars could not: a sense of intimacy with motion. When you rode it, you felt the city breathe with you, you were part of the rhythm, not fighting against it. That feeling explains why it became an object of affection, not just transportation. Its legacy continued long after production ended, but that story begins with the culture it inspired. As the 1970s unfolded, Italian design spread globally in fashion, furniture, and vehicles alike, and the Vespa Sprint Veloce was right there, defining an aesthetic of accessible sophistication. It was no longer just a ride, it was a style code, a visual shorthand for a particular kind of freedom. That is where its influence deepened, shaping not only mobility but identity. The next part of this story explores how the Vespa Sprint Veloce evolved from practical transport to cultural icon, navigating the shifts of modernity while keeping its soul intact. The Vespa Sprint Veloce 1972 entered the cultural landscape as more than a piece of engineering. It became a mirror of changing lifestyles. The world was speeding up, and yet, the Sprint Veloce encouraged a different pace, one rooted in presence and personality. Its success lay not only in what it did, but in how it made people feel. The Sprint Veloce represented a philosophy of movement that resisted excess. In an era increasingly obsessed with horsepower, it proved that character could outweigh raw figures. Every curve of its body carried purpose, every detail served a balance between efficiency and expression. The engineers at Piaggio had achieved something subtle but profound. They built a machine that celebrated the ordinary act of getting from one place to another as something joyful. The Vespa Sprint Veloce reflected Italy's design intuition, the understanding that beauty enhances functionality. While other manufacturers pursued complex solutions, Piaggio refined simplicity. Its steel body doubled as frame and style, while its single-cylinder engine remained accessible to home mechanics. This harmony appealed globally because it symbolized a kind of freedom that did not demand extravagance. You did not have to be rich or rebellious to enjoy it, you only needed curiosity and a destination. Its imagery and film amplified that message. Italian cinema of the 70s loved the contrast between elegance and everyday life. Scenes featuring the Sprint Veloce captured that contrast effortlessly. Whether parked against marble steps or rolling through crowded alleys, it fit perfectly into the visual poetry of Italian streets. Abroad, directors and advertisers borrowed that symbolism to evoke authenticity. The Vespa Sprint Veloce came to represent the idea of unforced style. It suggested that modern life could still have grace. At the same time, it carried a generational undercurrent. Youth across Europe and later the United States embraced it as a badge of individuality. While cars symbolized conformity and responsibility, the Sprint Veloce stood for spontaneity and self-expression. Its compact form allowed riders to weave through limitations, physical and social alike. The freedom it offered was personal, not performative. You did not need open highways, you needed only a spark of adventure. That philosophy spread beyond Italy because it resonated with universal human desires: independence, control, and connection. The Vespa Sprint Veloce delivered all three. Its mechanical layout encouraged self-sufficiency. Riders learned maintenance through tactile experience, creating bonds between person and machine. That intimacy cultivated loyalty. Even when newer scooters appeared, many owners kept their Sprints running for decades. In design schools, the Vespa Sprint Veloce became a case study in balance. Its form demonstrated how industrial design could merge ergonomics with emotion. The curve of the leg shield was not just aesthetic, it protected riders from wind and dirt. The wide seat accommodated two comfortably without sacrificing silhouette. Even its small details, chrome trim, badge placement, wheel covers, showed how discipline and design could yield harmony. It looked natural because it was resolved. Nothing felt forced. The deeper influence of the Sprint Veloce extended into the way people thought about mobility. It challenged the assumption that transportation had to grow larger and faster. Instead, it proved that refinement and restraint could create lasting appeal. Cities in the modern era, facing congestion and pollution, rediscovered that truth. Decades later, urban planners and designers often cite vehicles like the Vespa Sprint Veloce as models for sustainable transport: compact, efficient, human-centered. In that sense, the Sprint Veloce was ahead of its time. Its small engine and light frame aligned with principles now embraced by electric mobility designers. It was an analog precursor to digital minimalism. The community around it reinforced this connection. Clubs in Europe, Asia, and America organized gatherings, rides, and exhibitions centered on heritage and restoration. Owners shared parts, stories, and expertise. For many, keeping a Vespa Sprint Veloce running was an act of preservation, not only of machinery but of meaning. Each restoration told a story of craftsmanship passed between generations. That intergenerational bond is rare in modern consumer culture, where products are often disposable. The Sprint Veloce survived because it was built to be repaired, not replaced. Its mechanical transparency, visible screws, accessible panels, simple carburetor, invited learning. It gave owners agency, transforming maintenance into a ritual rather than a chore. This mechanical honesty built trust, and trust built legacy. Even collectors who keep pristine examples today often say that their appeal lies in authenticity. The paint might fade, the chrome might dull, but the essence remains untouched. Time enhances its character rather than diminishing it. That quality, hard to quantify, defines design icons. The Vespa Sprint Veloce 1972 embodies what designers call emotional durability. It stays relevant because it connects to enduring human values. Nostalgia plays a role, but function sustains it. When you see one parked today, it does not feel outdated, it feels grounded. It speaks quietly about a moment when craftsmanship and accessibility coexisted. The Sprint Veloce was not born to be exclusive, it became legendary precisely because it was inclusive. It democratized good design. This idea continues to influence modern mobility startups that focus on accessible urban transport. Many of their principles, lightweight design, ease of maintenance, aesthetic simplicity, trace back to what Piaggio achieved decades earlier. As electric scooters and microcars flood cities, echoes of the Sprint Veloce's philosophy are everywhere. Yet none capture its exact blend of form, sound, and tactile feel. It reminds us that progress should not erase personality. The Sprint Veloce teaches that technology serves best when it feels human. Its combination of mechanical charm and practical purpose offers a lesson for future designers. The emotional connection between rider and machine is not nostalgia, it is design ethics. As the story of the Vespa Sprint Veloce 1972 continues, its true legacy lies not only in its metal and mechanics but in its message. It showed that beauty can emerge from utility, and that freedom can be quiet yet profound. In the next segment, we explore how that message endures, how the Sprint Veloce became a living artifact of culture, a touchstone for design philosophy, and a bridge between generations who seek meaning in motion. The Vespa Sprint Veloce 1972 carries its legend forward not just through collectors and enthusiasts but through the way it continues to inspire modern thinking about design, culture, and sustainability. When we look at it today, half a century after its debut, it feels almost prophetic. The world has circled back to the same questions it answered effortlessly in 1972. How do we move freely without excess? How do we build machines that feel personal in an era of automation? The Vespa Sprint Veloce offers quiet but persuasive answers. Its very proportions encourage mindfulness. Compact enough to park anywhere yet substantial enough to feel secure, it embodied efficiency long before environmental awareness became mainstream. It taught that elegance and responsibility could coexist. That mindset makes the Sprint Veloce more than a vintage artifact, it is a relevant model for future mobility. Its engineering simplicity translates into modern sustainability principles. Repair instead of replace. Design for longevity, not obsolescence. Craft form that feels timeless rather than trendy. Those lessons resonate deeply in the 21st century, where the conversation around vehicles now includes carbon footprint and emotional value. The Vespa Sprint Veloce achieves both harmony and longevity without digital assistance or complex electronics. It reminds us that restraint can be revolutionary. The cultural dimension of its legacy is equally powerful. Around the world, the Sprint Veloce remains a visual shorthand for freedom and optimism. In films, music videos, and fashion photography, it still signals authenticity and effortless cool. It connects generations who never shared its original roads but understand its symbolism instinctively. The sight of its round headlight and flowing panels triggers an emotional response that no algorithm could predict. That emotional connection gives the Sprint Veloce an almost mythic presence. It bridges nostalgia and relevance with ease. Younger audiences encounter it as retro design, older audiences see it as memory made tangible. Both perspectives reinforce its power. Few machines achieve that equilibrium between utility and poetry. The Vespa Sprint Veloce 1972 did so naturally, through honesty of purpose. It did not try to be more than it was. That purity allowed it to transcend time. Restorers today approach it with reverence, not because it is rare, but because it represents a standard. Its design proportions, curved shield, tapered tail, upright stance, continue to inform how we visualize balance. Many modern scooters adopt similar geometry, even unconsciously. The DNA of the Sprint Veloce still runs through contemporary mobility. Beyond aesthetics, it also shaped social rituals. Community rides, vintage rallies, and club events built around the Sprint Veloce are not mere nostalgia gatherings, they are living cultural expressions. They show how shared appreciation of craftsmanship can build connection in a digital age. Riders who rebuild or ride these machines describe the same sensation, a blend of serenity and engagement. The controls are simple but responsive, the feedback immediate. It demands attention without anxiety. This physical interaction is increasingly rare in modern transport, where automation filters sensation. That directness is why many call the Vespa Sprint Veloce a reminder of human-centered design. It respects the rider as participant, not passenger. Its continued appeal is also economic. Vintage Sprint Veloces maintain value because they remain usable. Spare parts are available, and their design welcomes maintenance. Unlike many collectibles that sit behind glass, these scooters thrive on the road. Each mile reinforces their purpose. This usability sustains their narrative. Machines that keep moving remain alive in collective memory. The Sprint Veloce lives through motion. Even in museums, curators often rotate examples to keep them operational. That ongoing functionality mirrors its cultural function, to keep ideas circulating. Its influence on industrial design education persists. Professors reference it when teaching about honest form, efficient manufacturing, and emotional connection. It stands beside icons like the Eames chair or Leica camera in representing functional beauty. What they all share is coherence, every element justifies its existence. For the Sprint Veloce, even the smallest curve has meaning. That design coherence became part of Italy's national identity. It reflected a country that celebrated artistry within everyday life. While fashion and architecture expressed this through fabrics and facades, the Vespa Sprint Veloce translated it to motion. In many ways, it embodied Italian humanism, the belief that design should serve people gracefully. As urban mobility evolves toward electric and autonomous forms, the Sprint Veloce's philosophy becomes guidepost material. Imagine an electric scooter built with the same honesty, repairability, and emotional warmth. It would feel instantly familiar yet forward-looking. Designers studying the Sprint Veloce see not nostalgia but blueprint. The balance of utility, accessibility, and aesthetic appeal offers timeless relevance. The true impact of the Vespa Sprint Veloce 1972 lies in continuity. It bridges generations not through marketing but through meaning. It demonstrates that when engineering aligns with empathy, the result can outlast technology shifts and cultural trends. For owners who maintain theirs, it becomes more than possession, it becomes inheritance. Passing a Sprint Veloce down is like handing over a philosophy of living. The message is simple but profound: move with purpose, appreciate simplicity, and value longevity. Every time its engine starts, that philosophy comes alive again. Decades may separate the first production line from modern city streets, yet the feeling remains unchanged. The Vespa Sprint Veloce 1972 continues to glide through time with the same quiet confidence it had on its first day, reminding us that true icons never fade, they simply keep rolling, carrying forward the spirit that first set them in motion. The Vespa Sprint Veloce 1972 proves that great design does not age, it matures. What began as an affordable urban solution evolved into an enduring cultural symbol that still inspires how we think about mobility and meaning. Across its history, every generation has found something personal in it: students finding independence, travelers seeking simplicity, collectors preserving heritage. Each story adds to its legacy. The Sprint Veloce captures the spirit of an era when craftsmanship met optimism. Its clean proportions, reliable mechanics, and graceful motion told the world that practicality could have personality. That message remains relevant in a century defined by complexity. As cities grow denser and technology becomes invisible, the Vespa Sprint Veloce stands as a reminder that design should remain human at heart. It teaches restraint without sacrifice, style without arrogance, and sustainability without compromise. That combination is what keeps it alive in modern imagination. Beyond nostalgia, the Sprint Veloce 1972 is a conversation between generations, a rolling metaphor for continuity. It encourages us to ask what freedom really means and how machines can express values larger than function. When you see one gliding down a street today, its presence feels timeless because it represents more than motion, it represents intention. It is a portrait of movement shaped by empathy, efficiency, and elegance. The enduring lesson of the Vespa Sprint Veloce 1972 is simple: innovation that respects simplicity endures. So whether you are a rider, a designer, or someone who simply appreciates stories where design and culture meet, take one look at this scooter and remember, the future always begins with how we choose to move. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and let us know which classic icon you want to explore next.